traffic. I think I was going to be welcoming lots of new people, but whilst we have some new faces, we also have some new faces that have been here before. So Councillor Lamb and Councillor Arnold, I think you've been here before anyway, but this is your first one, isn't it, Councillor Edwards? So welcome to your first accountability board. I'm sure it will be fine, and I'm sure if there's any questions, well, please others. Shall we just do our usual introductions around the table? Councillor Glazer, can I start with you, please?
Certainly. Councillor Keystone is either in East.
Councillor John Lamb, I'm Secretary on the portfolio for regulatory services, but I'm standing for our leader, Charlie Fox. Well, I have been here before, as I'm saying, I'm not seeing the machine news on it's good to do that.
And Councillor Leslie Whiteland, I'm the public member of Essex County Council for Economic Renewal, Infrastructure and Planning.
Adam Ryan, Chief Executive of that.
Simon Cook, Chair of the Committee, Vice Chair of CLEP.
I'm Helen Dyer, Capital Programme Manager.
Roger Goff, Leader, Kent County.
Michael Newman, Head of Finance at Essex County Council, but I'm representing the municipal body section 159.
Deborah Arnold, I'm the public member for Governance and Transformation and Change and Deputy Leader of Private Council. Standing in Councillor Andrew Jeffries, the leader.
I'm Lauren Edwards. I'm the new cabinet member for Economic and Social Regeneration and Investment.
Great, thank you very much. Do I need to?
No.
I think we're okay.
Few people on the screen.
Is there anybody on screen that needs to introduce themselves?
Leslie.
Hi there.
Leslie, if you'd like to-
There's Leslie Rigby, South East LEP Capital Programme Officer. Can you all hear me okay? I've been asked to test that everything's fine.
Yep, that's very
Good,
good.
good. Excellent.
And Stephanis?
Hi, it's Stephanie Ennis from Essex Legal Services, from the accountable body Essex County Council.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, so just to go through a few housekeeping. This is usual stuff for most people that have been here before. Microphones are on the table. They're switched on as we're recording this meeting. If you do wish to speak or make any comments, if you can just try and make eye contact with me and raise your hand, that'd be really helpful so that I can make sure we take your comments. When we're voting, if you can either make sure you raise your hand or clearly articulate agree or disagree. Members of the public can join the meeting and officers are listening into the discussions, both in person and virtually. And a recording of the meeting will be available via the CLEP website after the meeting has concluded. For those attending the meeting virtually, you can keep yourselves on mute, please, but please don't use the chat function on Zoom as it will not be monitored during the meeting. Also, for those of you who are also attending virtually, if there are any technical issues, please stay on the call and we'll try and resolve those issues as quickly as possible. I don't have any confidential items to discuss during the meeting. We've already had one, but Helen, would you like to just remind us of the apologies we've received today, please?
Yes, so we've received apologies from Councillor Bentley, who's represented by Councillor Wagland, from Councillor Jeffries, who's represented by Councillor Arnold, and from Councillor Fox, who's represented by Councillor Lee.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we move on to the minutes of the last meeting. Councillor Goff, thank you for chairing the last meeting, very much appreciated. Can I take any comments or points of accuracy for the minutes of the last meeting, or are we happy to approve them?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Good. Are there any declarations of interest that any members need to make for today? No? Okay, thank you very much. And do we have any public questions today to take?
No.
No public questions. Okay, thank you. Great, I think we can crack on then first. Item number 5 then in that case. So CLEP operations update. Adam, I think you're taking that from the start.
I am. Thank you, Simon. I won't go through the paper in great detail. I hope we can take it as read, but there were one or two things that I wanted to highlight, given some recent conversations and things that have happened over the last few weeks and months as well. So first one really is self-evident, but we're delighted that Simon is the new deputy chair of the LEP. And obviously that having been formally agreed very recently, but by the LEP as member Simon's been able to share his first accountability board, which is fantastic. And thank you, Simon, and all of us involved for putting yourself forward and being in a position. The second thing I wanted to mention was the annual performance review that was recently reported on from government. So it's a sort of binary process again. You either meet their expectations or there are some issues to address. From a strategic perspective, we met their expectations, which is good. They did raise on this occasion a couple of issues in respect of delivery and governance, which aren't significant issues in themselves, and we are in continuing dialogue with them. Provided a number of assurances to us that they aren't something to sort of hugely worry about, and nevertheless we want to make sure that they're given the right assessment in these situations. Respect to delivery, in very broad terms, it just reflects the fact that we've got some projects in the capital programme that are yet to deliver, because obviously they're not planned to deliver yet in some cases, and also some are delayed as well. But we can obviously always point to the rigorous way in which we manage our capital programme, not least to the accountability board, and we're very proud of that. But I think that sort of binary situation of either meeting or not meeting was not met on the basis of those projects having a kind of longer delivery lifespan, which we all know and will accept it as a lot. We know that there are projects in that programme that are very important, but that weren't necessary to deliver in that timescale. From a governance perspective, quite simply because there isn't an ongoing deep dive into a portion of our projects in one of our areas, through a delivery partner in Sussex, they were in a position where they wanted to give us a clean bit of health and governance. So we await the outcome of that process, and at that point, hopefully, we can be clear on exactly where we are in respect to government's analysis of our system of governance. But we know that aside, that it still proud that it's as robust and transparent as any left in the country. Should take a lot of comfort from that. The assurance framework compliance monitoring is talked about in section 6 of the document. Clearly, despite all things moving forward that could change the LEPs, the assurance framework, its importance to how we do business and how we operate remains. So we will continue to be fully compliant with the assurance framework, provide government with everything they need in respect of all the returns they need on monitoring, erosion, etc. So I just wanted to reassure the board that is at the forefront of our minds when it comes to the way in which we organise the next activities, and that won't change until we're told otherwise by government as well. An update in respect of LEP core funding and everything to follow is what I'll end on. So, as is very usual, we put in an application for this year's core funding for the LEP probably around a month ago. So again, that's a reduced amount of 250,000 to support the running costs, predominantly of the team, but of everything else that we do. And 9 minutes ago, I received notification that that's been successful, so that funding is coming in. We've got determination, etc. So that's all good. So I can confirm that. I wasn't in a position to confirm that until just now. So I'm pleased to be able to do that. Obviously, the broader context is the change that's going to happen to LEP, well, LEPs across the country, but obviously specifically to this LEP. Very clear that the minded to announcement from government in March that this tranche of core funding will be the last. LEPs won't be funded from next year onwards, albeit yet to be, but we know it will be. That's been interpreted in different ways across the country. Some actually continue and some will not. We are going to have a conversation at the strategic board on the 7th of July about how we move forward with SELEC. The recommendation going to that board is that we move to disaggregate the LEP. But obviously the important thing now being everything that you said about the assurance framework and making sure we continue to do the right things by government and obviously by local partners, ensure that projects are delivered, is that we are quick to really build that transition plan with the local partners to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and all the things that need to be taken good care of are taken good care of. So it's obviously a difficult and emotive time for members of the team. But you know, we're moving forward with it in the way that we have to, and hopeful that all the good things that we've done over the last 12 years will find a way of informing what happens in the future.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Any questions? Okay. Three of my own. 9 minutes ago at 10 o'clock, you weren't paying attention to the start of the meeting. Haven't quite started. Haven't quite started. That's good. I think just for the purpose of the notes, I think in line with what you said about CLEP governments, those who were here on Monday, we had one away day Monday, we were joined by Ian McNabb from the department, who verbally gave us significant assurance that we have been managing public money incredibly well in comparison to other LEPs as well. So although that's not in writing yet, I think we can confirm that verbal assurance from me. Councillor Glazer was here on Monday as well, which was good and welcome to hear. When do you expect the outcome of the deep dive? Because those time scales have slipped quite a bit, haven't they? It's been going for quite a while.
The simple answer was we don't yet know. I'll say more than that. You know, we like to see the outcome because I think everybody involved will have something to do in response to the outcome of it. But you know, I mean, Councillor Glazer is obviously close to some of the detail than we are, but I couldn't possibly hindsight. We just know that, you know, from a LEP perspective and council body perspective as well, everything in relation to those projects that we received has been shared, every single thing. So, you know, we're confident that all information that is required has been provided. You know, we look forward to seeing the outcome and hopefully be able to work with that and move on positively.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 6 then. So the financial update, Lorna. Oh, sorry. I've done this before. I know it's terrible. Sorry, we've got the recommendations here. Sorry for the report. Can I just check with the members that we're okay with our 5 recommendations? To note the update on the recruitment of the CLEP deputy chair. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Note the outcome of the 22-23 APR section 5. Thank you. To note the update on insurance framework compliance monitoring in section 6. Thank you. Note the update on the LEP core funding. Thank you. And finally, to note the update on the governance KPIs and the changes to the risk register. Thank you. Lorna.
Good morning. The finance update for this meeting sets out the update on the 22-23 original outturn position with respect to the revenue budget and the reserves, and it sets out an update to the revenue funding position for 23-24. The reported position for 2023 provision only in respect of the fact that we still have to go through our external audit process, which is expected to happen over the summer period. So we'll be able to give a full assurance in the accounts to go to the October meeting of the strategic board. Overall, for 22-23, the upturn position reflects an improvement in comparison to the budget and the last reported position of the board. This primarily relates to the facts, as sort of indicated previously, that the capital balances held through the year attracted a higher than anticipated level of external interest. So we've been able to take the benefit of those sort of increasing interest rates during this year. And also the fact that we've held more capital money than we had anticipated because GBF money will return within the year. The other reason for the underspend was primarily due to staffing costs. There was posts during the year that were either not filled or filled later than anticipated, and we've had a number of staff who've left during the year, and those posts haven't been recruited to. Due to the ongoing uncertainties with respect to the LEP, every opportunity for the year has been sourced to keep costs and future commitments as low as possible to ensure sufficient funds remain to support the team during 23-24 and any transition arrangements are agreed for the ongoing arrangements as referenced by Adam in his update. Board will note that all the revenue grants have now been expended or repurposed to the operational reserves, with the only remaining funds to be closed being the skills capital COVID fund. Sorry, the skills COVID fund, their revenue not capital, that's in its final completion phase at the moment. And a full update on the COVID funds is expected at the strategic board meeting in July. The report recommends that around £160,000 of uncommitted funds from 22-23 is transferred to the operational reserve to support those future operational arrangements. The overall revenue position setup will be improved further. Oh no, the overall revenue has been improved further by the confirmation this morning of £250,000 for the current financial year of the core funding. The overall impact of this on the revenue budget will be reviewed over the summer with an intention to bring a revised budget for this year in September, because when we set the budget back last November for this year, we assumed no funding would be forthcoming for this year, because at that time that was the expectation. So it does give an opportunity to sort of review the plan, and that will be reconsidered off the back of the delivery plan that Adam and his team are taking to the board in July as well. I don't think there's anything more for me to say specific at the moment. The rest of it sits in the paper, but I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you, Lorna. Any questions for Lorna? Okay, thank you. Relatively straightforward and helped by the announcement now 17 minutes ago. Okay, so we've got four things in your report. Thank you, Lorna. So firstly, when we note the provisional net cost of services for 22-23 of 64,000.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we approve the provisional outturn position for the revenue budget, including the net contribution to operational reserves, notwithstanding what we've heard earlier? Yeah, thank you. Can we also approve the movement in reserves that Lawrence has taken through set out in table 5? And then finally, can we note the impact on the future funding position set out in section 311? Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 7, Helen.
So this is the usual update on the Getting Building Fund programme, and the report includes an update on those projects which have received approval for potential debt funding beyond March 2022, and an update on the GBF spend position. As the board are aware, there was a clear expectation from central government that GBF funding should be spent in full by the 31st of March. It was acknowledged at the last meeting that achieving this was no longer realistic due to the late cancellation of the small modular housing factory project, and the fact that we didn't have a long enough pipeline to allow full reallocation of that return funding at that time. Despite this, efforts continue to maximise the amount of GBF spend achieved by the 31st of March 2023, and spend reported in Q4 totaled 8 million, which was more than had been reported in quarters 1 to 3 combined, and brought total GBF spend in 22-23 to 15.5 million. Of the 85 million Getting Building Fund allocation, only just over 10 million remains unspent. About 8 million of this funding has been awarded to 9 projects, whilst the remaining just over 2 million remains unallocated. There is currently no timeline attached to the spend of the unallocated GBF funding. It is expected by government that this funding will be awarded to shovel-ready projects, as was originally required for the stream. It's intended that the process for managing the reallocation of this funding will be presented to the strategic board at their meeting on the 7th of July. It's currently expected that the 8 million GBF awarded to projects will be spent in full by the 30th of June. However, it should be noted that Essex County Council, as a county body there, continues to hold just over 1 million of this funding. This funding was awarded to GBF projects within Essex at the January 23 board meeting, but has not yet been drawn down by Essex County Council as responsible up to local authority due to ongoing council governance processes. It's understood that the required governance is now nearing completion, and steps have been taken by Essex County Council to seek drawdown of funding. Despite the progress made towards completing GBF spend, it should be noted, as already mentioned by Adam, that the outcome of the annual performance review of government identified a concern regarding the continuation of GBF spend into 23-24. Therefore, important efforts continue to be made to reallocate the available GBF funds and complete spend at the earliest opportunity. And finally, just to note that the report indicates that required GBF reporting was not provided by Medway Council in advance of this meeting. It should be noted that subsequent to the board papers being published, this reporting was submitted, and therefore it's intended that the 22-23 year-end spend position will be confirmed at the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Wakeman.
Not so much a question, but just to report that all 5 of the Essex County Council projects will, as I think you were alluding to, you would have also been told, will have spent and claimed by June, as I understand it. Chairman, I don't want to trespass on the agenda in terms of item 8, but it may help because the broadband extension project is allocated at item 8, discussed at item 8, as high risk. And important to note, I think that that's an anomaly caused by timing of financial reporting across the different partners, so that the project has spent and will claim again all remaining funds by the end of June 2023. So hopefully that provides appropriate reassurance.
Yes, no, thank you. And I'm conscious item 8 as well, we can focus on those time projects, so I know we'll probably delve into close. So thank you for that update. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you. Just trying to do a bit of an update, because I know part of this, if you look on the Queensway project, right, it's still ongoing. And of course, now we've changed the administration, we're still very focused and determined that that will go ahead and move ahead. But of course, we're still waiting to some degree from Sanctuary Housing, which is why what they're going to do after their due diligence examination. That hasn't been completed yet for ourselves. We're still working on it. There are some slight alterations we want to see in May, but other than that, we're still very focused on making sure that's delivered. So at the moment, we just want to move forward and hopefully the Sanctuary Housing will complete and we can move forward.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Lamb. And we will repeat this again when we go to item 8. Just to
Yes,
make sure.
but I saw it.
But no, thank you very much.
And if I might perhaps just add to that, certainly our experience in dealing with Essex with the Swan and Sanctuary situation, was that Sanctuary, I think, has some elements that it can't move on sometimes quite as quickly as it would if we were talking about. Sorry, Sanctuary. Yes, that's a difficult. Sanctuary it is a little slow, but we have found them to deliver. And certainly those in relation to the payment of the Swan Regional Housing. And it is possible to have good conversations with people at both levels. I suspect for legal reasons they do try and make sure that they kept a distinction between the two. But certainly we found that quite reassuring. So I think that is a useful add on and to what John was saying.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you very much.
It's just apologies for us not providing our updates and for the board papers. It's certainly not through the performance of the people who do this work. and they're working very hard. It's just that there's structure in that team at the moment, and obviously a lot of councils have resourcing issues at the moment. But we are there are plans to recruit, so hopefully this is
Thanks for that reassurance. Thank you. Okay, any other comments for item 7? And I know we'll repeat some of these in item 8 as well. I think it's just worth saying as well that the picture around GPF funding to spend is much more positive since the last meeting as well. So thank you to you and your officers for getting information back and for us concluding that. We've got three things to consider here. So can we first of all note the current forecast spend across the GBF programme 23-24 financial year of 7.979 million. Thank you very much. Can we agree the reported GBF spend on project delivery in 22-23 of 15.508 million as set out in table 1 and appendix A? Thank you. And finally, can we note the deliverability and risk assessment as set out in appendix 2? Thank you very much. Okay, item 8. We've just picked up on some items already, but I think, Leslie, you're going to summarise item 8 for us.
Yep, thank you very much. Can you still hear me all okay?
Thank you.
Excellent. So I'm going to cover sort of the 4 getting building funding projects which are currently considered to be high risk. So firstly, looking at the Better Queensway project. It's an estate and town centre renewal project, transforming a 5.2 hectare site in Southend to allow for redevelopment, delivering up to 1,669 homes, new homes, and 7,945 square metres of commercial space. And it's receiving 4.2 million GBF funding. As the board are aware, it was intended that the project would be delivered as a joint venture between Southend-on-Sea City Council and Swan Housing. However, in February 2023, a merger between Sanctuary Housing Association and Swan Housing was finalised, with Swan Housing becoming a subsidiary of Sanctuary. Since the completion of that merger, Sanctuary have been undertaking required due diligence, including a review of the business plan for the wider Better Queensway project and a review of the GBF funding claims that had already been submitted by Swan Housing. So from our sort of perspective, from a seller perspective, the project has been identified as high risk due to a number of factors, really. Firstly, Southend-on-Sea continue to hold the full 4.2 million GBF funding allocation, and it will not be possible for this to be issued to the joint venture group until Sanctuary have confirmed that they are fully comfortable that the expenditure claimed by Swan is actually eligible. It is hoped that this confirmation will be received prior to the end of June, allowing the funding to be transferred in accordance with the decision previously taken by the board. Secondly, until Sanctuary Housing have completed their review of the business plan and Southend-on-Sea City Council have completed their required governance processes, it is not going to be possible for the council to provide required assurances regarding ongoing delivery of the wider project. Should the wider project ultimately not progress to delivery, it is likely that the board will be asked to agree the removal of the project from the GBF programme and the return of the GBF funding allocation. Situations complicate a little bit more due to the need for Southend-on-Sea to renegotiate the terms of their housing infrastructure fund grant determination agreement with Homes England due to the delays encountered in progressing the project. While this does present a risk of HIF funding and delivery of the wider project, Southend-on-Sea City Council have advised that Homes England remain positive about the project on the whole. It is expected that the review of the business plan and Southend-on-Sea City Council required governance will be completed by the end of September 2023 at the latest. There's also an outstanding requirement for Southend-on-Sea City Council to provide assurances to the board regarding the ongoing delivery of the wider project. It's important that these assurances are provided. However, they need to be informed by the outcome of Sanctuary's review of the business plan and the completion of the required governance by the council. Currently, it's hoped this will be possible to get these assurances at the next board meeting, but this may slip until November this year, depending on the time required by Sanctuary to complete their review. Even if it is not possible for the assurances to be provided in September, further update on this project will need to be provided at that time. Moving on to the extension of the full fibre broadband rollout in Essex to reach rural and hard to reach areas project. Superfast Essex is a broadband improvement programme delivering superfast and ultrafast broadband to as many homes and businesses as possible. GBF funding of 2.297 million was awarded to enable the extension of the programme over a wider geographical area, incorporating additional rural areas. The GBF spend forecast provided at the last meeting indicated that only the additional GBF funding of 118,000 awarded to the project in January 2023 would remain unspent at the end of March 2023. However, the latest reporting shows slippage in the GBF spend, with approximately 513,000 now forecast to be spent in Q1 23-24. It is understood that work to deliver the project has been completed and that the only remaining activity is to ensure receipt and payment of any remaining invoices. We'd like to note also that Essex County Council, as the accountable body for seller, continues to hold that 118,000 I've already mentioned in January 2023, when it was awarded in January 2023. This funding was being held while Essex County Council completed required governance processes. These governance processes are due to complete this week, and therefore steps have been taken by Essex County Council to seek drawdown of this funding. Assuming this funding can be transferred prior to the end of June 2023, it is still expected that full GBF spend will be achieved by the 30th of June this year. Moving on to the third project, the No U70 South Essex project. This seeks to provide secured loans to property owners to renovate long-term empty commercial premises, bringing them back into effective use for residential, alternative commercial, or mixed-use purposes. And the project received 1.2 million GBF funding. From our side of it, the project has seen slippage again in the GBF spend, leaving a balance of nearly £793,000 still to spend by the end of this month, compared to the 223,000 reported at the last meeting. As a result, we'll have to flag this as high risk as well. Southend-on-Sea City Council have now confirmed that all but one of the planned loans have been completed and paid. Final checks are ongoing in relation to the remaining loan with a view to securing completion prior to the 30th of June. However, due to complexities surrounding this loan, the required governance is more complicated, and therefore there remains a risk that full GBF spend will not be achieved by that date. Finally, got the Tech Fort Phase 2 project. This project has allowed for the casemates at the Citadel to be brought into beneficial economic use, creating jobs in Dover and maintaining the heritage asset itself. Following successful delivery of the first phase of the project, Phase 2 seeks to specifically refurbish casemates 53 and 54, creating 757 square metres of space for commercial use with £850,000 of GBF funding. We've identified this project as high risk due to the full GBF allocation now being forecast in Q1 23-24, compared to the 85,000 reported at the last meeting. However, it should be noted that Kent County Council have already processed an initial claim from the delivery partner for approximately £350,000. Although the project did suffer delays initially, the contractor from Phase 1 has actually been retained and has accelerated works where possible to close the gap and keep the project as close to the original timescales as feasible. Snagging meeting took place a couple of weeks back to assess the remaining works, giving confidence that necessary recovery action and mitigation is being prioritised. It is still expected that spend of the GBF funding will be complete by the 30th of June, but this risk will continue to be monitored. So looking at this holistically, delivery of these projects will continue to be closely monitored, and an update on the status of the project will be provided at the next board meeting. Should any of the projects be unable to complete their GBF spend by the 30th of June this year, there will be a requirement for the board to agree retention of the funding against the project at the next meeting. And if an extension is not agreed, any expenditure otherwise in accordance with the decision of the board will need to be returned to Essex County Council for reallocation for alternative projects. And I think that's me done.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. Thanks very much for the update across those high risk projects. So appreciate your updates and appreciate the comments on those reports. We've heard some comments earlier on. I don't know if there's anything further that anybody would like to add. Councillor Lamb first, then Councillor Wagner, then
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned in the previous reports, we know what's happening. And certainly, I think one of the things we have to be aware of is that centering, you mentioned both Leslie and yourself, is not as fast as we would like it to be, but we are working it. And it's that going through to try and get the reports coming through, where they are, how we can go, their review. I think one of the problems as well we have, and we've got to be careful, we appreciate what was said about funding, maybe withdrawn back. Some of the dates that put on this actually are very challenging, knowing the timescales we have. And it's that threat as well, could, with Swan and Sanctuary trying to get their act together, could actually put a dent in us to say what's happening. It would be better if the threat of withdrawal, yeah, it's still there, but the date is longer. So it's as if we were talking September, you've got a far better chance of at the end of actually getting it, because we've changed the administration. As I said earlier, some of the things that are in the wider scheme are actually all going ahead, but there are certain more significant items we need to order, and they've got to be changed. So we want to make sure that we're working this, we want to deliver it. We're not just giving the money out, as you can see from the report, we're holding back where it is that they need it, we will pass that only if they are going to deliver. And that's what we are after. This scheme is still very important for us as a city. We certainly still have the homes money coming in as well, and so on. So what we want to make sure of is, let's move it forward. The quicker we can do that, and certainly keep Leslie in touch with it, the better. But it's trying to make sure that people aren't worried now that, hold on, if we don't get it done by the end of June, we're going to lose the money or whatever. It needs to be looked at in the more holistic view, and I think that would be better if, as I say, it was extended further to make sure that there's no threat of that happening, albeit we are realistic to know that it's not, the money's going to go back.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Councillor. I don't think there's a threat of the money being withdrawn by 30th of June.
But people do think of it at times.
Yeah, no, I think that's been clear in the report, and we'll come to those recommendations later. But we're expecting an update at the September accountability board. I'm sure that's in there.
The funding will only be withdrawn if the project cannot progress to delivery, so we're not proposing taking funding like this. We're just waiting to see the outcome of the.
But some of the things have an idea coming back is, oh, don't get the money's going to be. No, that's the one needs to know.
No.
Get on with the job and deliver. That's what I want to make sure, and I know that only Fox wants to make sure that we don't want the wrong messages going, because that's what starts getting jitters for people.
Yeah, I think to be clear, I mean, we'll come to a recommendation later, but our best case is that we have a really clear and thorough update providing assurances at the next board in September. The more tricky circumstance will be if that then moves into the November board meeting. So I think that's pretty much where we are. So thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watkins.
It's a couple of quick points on that actually. One is that I think it's right, isn't it, that this isn't a merger, which I think is pretty important for the record. It's not a merger between Sanctuary and Swan. They are pains to point out. I think that in part is what is creating the timescale differences, because they have to do two lots of governments, I suspect. And I do think it's important to keep the pressure up. That's how we addressed this matter before. I think it's important that they keep in mind that Senate is positive about Sanctuary to the extent that it ensures that it behaves in a way that we all expect to be behaved, given what happens if our Senate funding is concerned. Happy to share contacts if that's a help at any stage. Just going back just very quickly on the broadband extension project, my information is very firm. I just reconfirmed that the project has spent and will claim all remaining funds at the end of June 2023. There's no slippage in the project in that sense. What there is a accounting treatment point which is taking it over into 2024. But as I say, I think it therefore probably is within the high risk category, but not by virtue of being in the ordinary sense of the word high risk. So hopefully that again is reassuring.
Thank you. Councillor Goff.
I'll be very brief, and as we said earlier on, you can touch on these either on the previous item or this one. But Tech Fault, as Leslie set out, is now phase 2 progressing very fast. There were some issues over damp within the Citadel, but now these invoices are being submitted. We anticipate the last one will be submitted before the end of the month. So it should all be sorted for the end of the first quarter.
Thank you. Okay, any other points or comments or questions? Okay, we've got 4 things to consider. So can we firstly note the update on the Better Queensway project with also the comments that Councillor Lane has provided alongside Councillor Wagner? Thank you. Can we agree that a further update on the Better Queensway project, which provides information on the outcome of Sanctuary Housing Association's review of the business plan for the White project, the outcome of Southend-on-Sea City Council governance processes, and contains the required assurances regarding the ongoing delivery of the wider project to be provided at the September 23 board meeting. Subject of the required assurances dependent upon Sanctuary Housing Association completing their review of the business plan and the completion of the required governance processes within Southend on Siege City Council. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you. Can we thirdly note the updates on the extension of the full fibre broadband rollout in Essex to reach rural and hard to reach areas, no use empty South Essex and the Tech Fort phase 2 projects? And finally, can we note the status of the extension of the full fibre broadband rollout in Essex to reach rural and hard to reach areas, no use empty South Essex and Tech Fort phase 2 projects will be confirmed at the September 23 board meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Excellent. So if we can move on to item 9, Helena.
Thank you. So this report provides the usual update on the growth fund programme and including an activity risk assessment for projects. As the board are aware, the LGF programme officially ended on the 31st of March 2021, but there are a number of ongoing projects which need to be monitored. The report identifies 11 projects which are currently considered to be high risk. Updates on 5 of those projects will be considered over the course of the next few agenda items, while brief updates on the other 6 projects are set out in this report. At the last meeting, the board were advised that the risks associated with the Hastings and Bexhill movement and access to the pitch, and were advised it was expected that a change of request be brought forward for consideration of the meeting. However, as set out in the report, work is ongoing to understand the implications of both the refusal or permission for cycle route for Alexander Park and reported cost increases across the package. East Sussex County Council are currently considering which elements of the package should be prioritised for delivery through the LGF project. This work will help to inform a revised business case, which will be presented to the board consideration at the next meeting. While efforts continue to deliver the high-risk projects, milestone remains subject to close monitoring by LEP. As Adam has already referenced, the outcome of the annual performance review with government expressed concern regarding the ongoing high-risk LGF project and apparently lack of progress towards delivery. This feedback was in part due to the approach taken to reporting on LGF spend government, but it is considered important that outstanding issues associated with high-risk projects are addressed by March 2024, wherever possible, whilst established robust monitoring processes remain in place. The report also sets out the current LGF spend position and provides an indicative 22-23 year-end spend position. LGF spend in 22-23 is reported to total 12.447 million, excluding DOT retained schemes, increasing to 12.685 million, including these schemes. This spend is significantly lower than was forecast at the start of the financial year, and this is due to a number of factors, including ongoing COVID-19 and Brexit impacts on project delivery. It's currently forecast that 11.027 million LGF will be spent in 23-24, with the remaining balance of 37 million forecast for spend 24-25 onwards. Firstly, I just wanted to touch upon Appendix G, which lists projects which there is outstanding of due post-scheme completion monitoring and evaluation report. Whilst it's appreciated that local partners have experienced resourcing issues in relation to these reports, provision of the post-scheme completion monitoring and evaluation is essential so that we can all understand exactly what's been achieved as of the LGF programme. Also provides the opportunity to learn from the experience of delivering the LGF projects, which uses information to inform delivery of alternative funding streams moving forward. If the monitoring and evaluation is not completed, this impacts on our ability to fully report the benefits realised through the LGF programme to both this board and to central government. This risk was also identified during a recent internal audit undertaken by Essex County Council, which assessed the robustness of select governance and decision-making, project delivery, and financial risk management process. The audit identified the important role that monitoring and evaluation reports play in allowing this board to effectively monitor project implementation and delivery. In addition, it was noted that the reports provide assurance that projects have delivered in accordance with their agreed business case. It's intended that at future meetings there will be a greater focus on providing update on benefits realised to date and a more comprehensive update on all outstanding monitoring and evaluation and the actions being taken to secure submission of these reports. Whilst this report remains, it should be noted that at least 2 local department authorities have now put additional resources from the outstanding monitoring and evaluation.
Thank you, Helen. And I'm conscious that we're also going to be covering quite a few other items later on under LGF in a moment. But in respect of this particular report, are there any comments or questions? No? Oh, sorry, sorry, I'm looking in your direction too, so sorry, thank you.
I just wanted to give people an update because the situation has moved on in respect of the 4 roundabouts in Redgrave Tunnel, which is discussed in page 128 and 129 of the report, beginning in paragraph 6.12.8. So obviously due to increasing cost of inflation, the previous administration at Medway Council submitted some revised plans to Homes England, which removed the rail link that was proposed and replaced it with a bus route. But unfortunately, since then, we've been told by Homes England that the £170 million HIP funding is under threat of being pulled. And that is because primarily the previous administration's failure to get a local plan through. And I believe our current local plan is from 2003. But we have a new council leader, Vince Maple, and he has requested an urgent meeting, obviously, with Homes England and with the Department for Levelling Up with our case. I believe the decision about the funding lies with the Secretary of State. Obviously, our case will be that we're a new administration at Medway Council. We're less than a month into running things. This sort of internal political disagreements within the previous administration, the Conservative group, don't apply anymore. So we're definitely determined to deliver a local plan and publicly committed to do so in the next 2 years. But nevertheless, we are in a strange position where one part of Whitehall is something that we need to build quite rightly, lots of homes. And then another part of Whitehall is threatening to pull the funding that would allow us to do so in a sustainable way. That's obviously not the first time that Whitehall has maybe not been particularly joined up. Probably won't be the last. But you know, we will obviously be pushing very hard for a sensible, pragmatic solution to make sure that we can have the funding for the infrastructure that is really needed to deliver the 9,000 homes that it will support. But nevertheless, I recognise that there is the risk that it may be pulled, and that if that happens, we'll have to return to sell out LGF funding of £10.8 million. Obviously, don't want that to be the outcome. Obviously, going to do everything in our power to make sure that doesn't happen. But it will, of course, have to plan on that basis. So just wanted to be transparent with everybody. All of this information is in the public domain, but just wanted to make clear that was the position currently, which is in the bits of papers produced.
Excellent, thank you so much for that update. And as you said, I think other members around the table will know full well that it wouldn't be the first or the last time that various different departments have got in the way of us delivering projects on time and as planned. So thank you for that assurance and thank you for that transparency. Much appreciated.
Yes, just to thank Helen for the update on the flexible movement access passage. Clearly there have been changes in there and the work is ongoing about with the additional cost about what projects should proceed, and it said we will get a report to the next meeting.
Great, thank you, Councillor McLeod. Councillor Mann?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to raise a couple of points on the A127 Fairfield interchange, which I know isn't this county council actual item, but of course it really does affect the whole of the city of Southend. And so what I'm looking at, I know the compulsory purchase has now been completed, those orders and the objections. But I'm just wondering, has the business case now been actually updated and submitted to DFT? Because also I'm thinking if it's DFT that is starting to, and the Secretary of State is delaying it, then can we put a bit of extra cushion from ourselves to say this is now, it's taken all this while, well, we've had to go through the processes, but it's such an important actual project, not only to Essex, but to the whole of the city of Southend, because that junction has a massive impact on the traffic problems that we have, going up and down the 127.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I don't know if Adam or you want to make any comments into that at all, but I think we've certainly experienced that previously, and whatever we can do to help, we will.
I'll be very happy to pick up with John and find a way. For sure.
Brilliant. And of course, just want to make sure we're fully supportive of the whole subject, as you can tell, so we just want to make sure you move it on.
Yes, it's great to hear you talking about the city of Southend. It's the first time I've heard that. So it's nice. It rolls off the tongue naturally. So that's very good to hear. Okay, we've got a number of things. Sorry.
No, maybe one small point, it is simply that I think we've got one or two queries, our monitoring evaluation. It's something that we know, broadly speaking, a good place anyway, but I'm personally just slightly concerned that we do want to get a few responses short term, and have those, then obviously we will be able to respond to that. So just because the fact that we've got really good work being done here, and as you know, I have said in the past that the monitoring evaluation is really important.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wakeland. I know my predecessor also mentioned it a number of times, notwithstanding the challenges and pressures that all of our officers are under, doing a great job that they do every day. It is incredibly important, perhaps even more so now, over the next 12 to 18 months, as we start to transition the LEP into a different set of circumstances, that these monitoring evaluation reports are completed by officers. So I know I'm stating the obvious, Councillor Wakeland, thank you for mentioning that. I know that colleagues around the table will be making sure that that continues to be the expectation that we set. So thank you for your support in that. Okay, we've got a number of things here just to note or agree. So first of all, can we note the provisional total spend in 22-23 of 12.447 million LGF, excluding the DFT retained schemes, and it's 12.685, including the DFT retained schemes as set out in Table 1 and Appendix A of the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we agree the updated total planned LGF spend on project delivery in 23-24 of 10.941 million, excluding the DFT retained schemes, and increasing to 11.027 million, including the DFT retained schemes as set out in Table 2 and Appendix A of the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. We note that a revised business case for the Hastings and Bexhill movement and access package will be brought forward for board consideration at the September 2023 meeting.
Noted.
Thank you. We note the deliverability and risk assessment as set out in Appendix D.
Noted.
Thank you. And can we note the list of outstanding post-scheme completion monitoring and evaluation reports as set out in Appendix G?
Noted.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 10. This is our LGF high risk update. So Howard, you're taking us through these.
Yeah. Morning, everyone. So the purpose of this report is for the accountability board to receive an update on the delivery of two of the high risk projects. First one, Grey South project. I'm going to give a quick overview of the two projects. So those new. The Grey South project in its current form is seeking to deliver an underpass within the town centre to replace the existing level crossing and to create a public square at each end of the underpass, designed to provide active urban spaces to a wide range of events and activities. The board has received regular updates on the financial situation at Thurrock Council since the Section 114 notice was issued and have been advised of the measures that are in place. At the last meeting, the board advised that a full review was underway to establish the ongoing viability of the project and to consider whether the project in its current form was the correct scheme for delivery. It was expected that an update on the outcome of the review would be provided at this meeting. However, Thurrock Council have advised that this information remains under review and subject to internal discussions with the leader and portfolio holder. It is now expected that an update on the outcome of the review will be provided at the next meeting. As the expected update has not been forthcoming, it is not currently possible to confidently identify the level of change that may be required for the project if it is to progress to delivery. Therefore, with consideration of the requirements of the Seller Assurance Framework, two potential scenarios have been set out in the report. The best case scenario assumes minor changes to the projects and will require completion of a change request process. It is expected that this process could be completed in time for consideration of the February 2024 board meeting. The worst case scenario assumes that the proposals set out in the original business case are considered unrealistic and there is a requirement for a new proposal to be brought forward. This scenario would require either submission of a new business case or an updated business case. It is not expected this process will be completed prior to the end of 2023-24, and therefore, under this scenario, a report will need to be provided for the February 2024 February board meeting, which sets out expectations as to how the project will be managed going forward in respect of the LGF spend and its compliance with the Senate assurance framework. As the board will recall, the decision was taken at the last meeting to place LGF spend on this project on hold due to deliverability and affordability concerns. It should be noted that LGF spend will remain on hold until there is a clear way forward for the project and ongoing compliance with the Senate assurance framework has been confirmed. Moving on to the A28 Surrey Link Road. The A28 Surrey Link Road project involves a delivery of a new link road between the A291 and A28 southwest of Surrey, Canterbury. A bridge will be constructed over the railway line and the Great Stour River to enable traffic to avoid the Surrey level crossing and the congested road network in the area. At the last meeting, the board agreed to further extend the deadline for completion of the land acquisition to 7th of April 2025 and the completion of the project to 31st of December 2026. This was due to negotiations that were ongoing on the Surrey site, which is one of the linked proposed new residential developments enabled by the project. The report gives an update on project progress. However, as reported at the last meeting, the negotiations in relation to the Surrey site are not expected to complete until the end of June. It is still expected that these discussions will conclude in accordance with this programme, but it should be noted that if this isn't possible, there may be further delays in the delivery of the programme. At the last meeting, the board revised that the termination for North Hurston development planning application was expected in June 2023. However, this has now been pushed out to September 2023 due to the need to resolve nutrient neutrality issues. There is still a requirement for a Section 96 agreement to be completed in relation to this development to secure a financial contribution towards the delivery of the project. The delay in determining the planning application will not affect the publication of the compulsory purchase order, which is still expected in September 2023. The report states that the design and build contract was due to be signed on the 5th of June. Although I've been advised that this be slightly delayed, I think expected by the end of this month.
Correct.
The update provided at the next meeting is expected to confirm that negotiations between the developer and landowner of the Surrey site have concluded successfully, provide an update on the status of the North Hurston planning application, and confirm that the CPO has been published or is ready for publication. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Howard. Comments, questions?
If I may just come in, I mean, on Surrey, I'm acutely conscious this is something which I've certainly brought to this board quite a number of times, and indeed it was so long before I was here. I reversed to an agreement in 2016. So it is a long-running and complex project. I think it's the first time I've actually seen the Moulin snails referred to in any paper in this board. And that nutrient neutrality and a range of other issues as well. But as was mentioned, that 5th of June deadline has moved back to the end of the month, but that should be delivered, and hopefully we'll be able to bring all those updates to the board in September.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. The chair of OSC following the discussion that the OSC board yesterday, just asked me to raise that, so where it's south and progress on that particular project. But I think anything further to happen, just to know. So,
Okay, thank you. Noted. Any other comments or questions? Howard, sorry, go on.
As I may have one, there's a sort of related point, but I might hold that to the later on.
Thank you. Howard, just a question for you. Those scenarios, it's very helpful that you put those scenarios in there. Sorry. Right, I was getting distracted. of those scenarios that you've put in there, which in your professional opinion do you think is most likely based on the information you have to hand at the moment?
I think it's fair to say that we will be clearer on this, because as you'll see in the timeline, for the best case scenario, we intend to have a meeting with Thurrock Council. I've got August, we might even have that in July, and I think we'll have a better understanding then of what Thurrock's thoughts are, and then what our thoughts will be as well. It's really difficult to say, and I think it's also possible, of course, that we've said a best and a worst, but the actual scenario could be sort of something in the middle. But I think we definitely have a better idea early August, and of course we'll bring that update with Thurrock.
If I can just sort of comment on there, I mean, like everyone, we've just gone through the election, we've got a new leader, we've got a new portfolio holder for regeneration, everybody's getting up to speed. We're expecting a report and a full briefing in July in order to sort of start to discuss those scenarios and make sure we keep on track for you going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb and then Councillor Bob.
Yeah, just to bring in support of what Deborah was saying, I mean, it's knowing they've just changed, but in fact, this scheme is so important to them, especially with this actual crossing that they have. And I know it well when I've been to meetings down. It's a dreadful place, you know, to have to go, and it really does need that if we can resolve it quickly to get moving, go forward, and that would help everyone, not only help the railway, but it would help all the residents down there, and the people that are using that area, and it's got great potential.
Thank you. Councillor Bob.
My point was, as I say, I was thinking I might bring this up a little bit later, just given we've got a number of projects which are, clearly presenting big challenges, and we've got timelines for February 2024. Now, I'm extremely sympathetic to that, as you say, new administration, new members seeking to address the issue, and I don't wish to put any pressure on that. But what is our approach going to be, or when do we set this out in terms of where, if some of these, any of these projects
With rail network that have been more positive, I fully appreciate timescales. He is reporting back to cabinet, the new cabinet in July, but I would just like him to be able to offer wisdom and reassurances around this.
Kevin, you want to give us a short update?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just taking on, following up on Councillor Arnold, is the review is actually ongoing at the moment. We have the results of some of the reviews. We're actually discussing those with key stakeholders, particularly Network Rail. We hope to be in a position to actually to conclude those and have those discussions with the stakeholders and obviously advise and report back to the portfolio holder and the cabinet. As Howard is listed in the report, that's will be reported back in the September cycle.
Okay, thanks very much, Kevin. So unless we have any more comments or questions, we can go straight to the recommendations we've got for item 10. Okay, excellent. So if I take the Grays South first, so to note the update on the project that we've been provided today. Thank you. And secondly, to note that the further update will be brought to the September 23 board meeting, which will provide an update on the outcome of the project reviews associated with the Grays South Regeneration Area Scheme. Thank you. In respect to the A28 Story Link Road, can we note the update on the project? Secondly, can we note that a further update will be brought to the board meeting in September 23, which will include the confirmation that negotiations between the developer and landowner on the Story site concluded successfully. That confirmation of the status of the planning application for the North Hurlston development, and confirmation that the CPO has been published or is ready for publication. Thank you. Okay, got the excited. Thank you. That's okay. Okay, we're moving on to item number 11. So we're going to focus now on some of the key projects, 3 of the key projects under LGF. So item number 11 is the Park Station. And I think, is it Gary, you're going to introduce this item?
Hello all, yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm here from Essex County Council, Gary McDonald. I'm a programme manager managing the HIF programme. As I say, for Essex County Council, I work in highways and transportation. So yeah, just to give you an update in terms of where we are with Bewley, obviously identified as a high risk project. I've got three matters to update you on. General progress, specifically around track possessions, which has been an item this board has been monitoring, and also the finalisation of the implementation agreement to take us through to completion. So firstly, on general progress, I have to say the project is progressing very well. It is currently progressing to programme, and all I can say is it's making excellent progress on site. Having visited earlier this week, you really see the station starting to sort of take effect. The platforms themselves are you can see in place. All the steels and the concrete is in place to get the platforms built up, and all the materials there are on site. So if you're passing there on a train, you will reasonably quickly start to see things come out of the ground there. So we're very pleased with progress. We've got a key track possession coming up this Saturday evening where the rail gets broken. So members of the board will be aware that the station brings real benefit to the Great Eastern Main Line insofar as it's a 3-platform station. So adds extra durability for Gemmill, and we're creating that third line. The work on that starts this weekend. So we've got a key track possession where we'll actually break the line, which in rail terms is quite a significant piece of work, so that we can start to bring that third line out. But yeah, as I say, all systems go on site, and should board wish to visit site again at any point, by all means, please let me know. We're always open to bringing people to site and photo opportunities, etc. Now that things are really starting to come out of the ground. The second item that I've been asked to update is around track possessions. These are the key program drivers, and obviously program to a great extent drives cost. We've had 11 track possessions so far, all of them successfully executed. We're going to have about 30 or so, but I'm happy to report that all of the track possessions that we were seeking to secure around the coming Christmas and New Year period have now been secured. So we have those possessions, and that's important. As I say, if we weren't to get hold of them for whatever reason that may be, we would be looking at having to develop the station in an alternative way. Probably more track possessions would be required for shorter periods. Getting that key block within the Christmas and New Year period really enables efficiency of working and enables us to get on and really deliver a large chunk of work where we interface with the rail. And then finally, again, as board will be aware, we've only signed an agreement between ourselves and Network Rail, and that these are back-to-back agreements. So we contract with Network Rail, who manage the project on our behalf, and Network Rail contract with J. Murphy and Sons, who are the, as board will be aware, for various reasons that have been advised previously, we split the construction into 2 parts. We signed the first implementation agreement back in December, and that's under that contract we're currently running and getting all the work completed that we have so far. We will be getting into an agreement with J. Murphy and Son by the end of July. Now, board will be aware that I've reported various dates to you that have slipped for one reason and another. This one won't slip. If it does slip, there are potential risk exposures to us. We're basically at the ceiling now under the works we can execute under the first implementation agreement. But I'm very happy to report that certainly even from yesterday, we are close to agreeing the specific wording. There's no major showstoppers now. Our legal side have been involved with Network Rail's legal side, and there was a positive meeting and exchange of emails yesterday. So we're all systems go to get that agreement signed, and Network Rail have started their internal governance to allow that to be signed by the end of July. So that's significant. They've got significant government governance arrangements that they need to go through, and I think similarly we are starting similar arrangements on our side. So everything is all pointing to that being completed by the end of July. I think really that's all I'm wish to say at the moment. So I guess available for any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Howard, is there anything you wanted to add on top of that, which Gary has just taken us through very swiftly?
Yes, please, Chair. Good briefing. So thank you, Gary, for his update. From a Senate perspective, and as reported previously, the primary concern in relation to this project is the identified risk of the capital allocation. Whilst it is acknowledged that Essex County Council have taken steps to mitigate this risk, if the funding is lost, the council could be required to seek alternative funding to complete delivery of the project in accordance with the agreed LGF business case. If alternative funding could not be secured, the board would be asked to consider removing the project from the LGF programme and seek the return of the LGF funding as the project has no longer been delivered as agreed. This would not only impact on the benefits forecast to be achieved through the Select Growth Bill, but would also mean that a key part of sustainable transport measures for North East Chelmsford would not be forthcoming. And Gary did touch on this, and I think explained it quite well, but just from a Select point of view, the report sets out a two-stage implementation agreement. Gary replicated that process between Essex County Council and Network Rail, which has enabled works to commence on site, as you were saying. However, the second implementation has not yet been signed, although we expect that to be signed by the end of July, as Gary said, to allow full delivery of the project. However, it is unclear what the position will be if following the signing of the second implementation agreement, Homes England took the decision to withdraw the funding for this project. These risks will continue to be monitored, and a further project update will be presented at the next meeting.
Okay, thanks, Howard. Any comments, questions? Councillor Wagner?
Yes, I would, probably because there are one or two people around the table now who weren't around when we first started all of this. It's worth just keeping in mind, this is the first railway station on Great Eastern for over 100 years. It will carry with it not just the three platforms that Gary was mentioning, but a major loop which will enable all of you who have the joys from time to time of travelling on the Great Eastern Main Line, including from Stratford, which is that's the station, of course, and lots of connections. What this will do is to enable things like freight and the like to manoeuvre without the sort of delays that currently arise. It also supports substantial housing, chances to garden communities, and really a huge amount of surrounding benefits from the infrastructure, all of which, as we say, to some extent, having got here, probably amount to a given. Important, I think, to understand, therefore, that we are doing this with Network Rail and Murphy's, an interesting format for the lawyers amongst us in terms of looking at what Network Rail's status in this is. But at any rate, done under an interim agreement which didn't really just quite allow us to go on site. If you go there, you will now see the station emerging. This is well past that sort of stage. But Network Rail have processes, and we have to deal with those in the order in which they first find them. They delivered a requirement that they wanted to do an additional bit of that processing, which they have now done, and it is that, not us, which is taken into the July date. In terms of the HIT funding, we have obviously, for clear and present reasons, no intention of pushing the funding allocation at risk. I think plainly with any major project of that kind, you can have something which is a what if risk, but we're not in that what if risk at the moment. We also importantly have agreement from Homes England in relation to their contract, which enables us to continue. So from our point of view, this is going as well as, like I'm saying, I'm doing major projects for 40 years, going back to the Channel Tunnel and forward to the Shard. This looks to me to be one of the better organised and run projects that I think I've seen going forward. So yes, of course, we hear absolutely what Sarah says. We are determined to protect selling monies and also to make sure that this project concludes. It is vigorously supported and constantly mentioned to us by government as differentiated from many others, massively supported by every stakeholder that we have involved in this. So we think those are factors which can be taken into account in looking at this project going forward, and would hope that members will be happy with noting where we are now and continuing the function that we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Wagner. Yes, and one of our 2 new railway stations in CLEP that we're hoping to fund as well. It's a very exciting project. And I remember hearing about the challenges around bus replacement services and all sorts at the beginning as well. So
if you would be so kind, the bus replacements, well, the replacement services run to a small village called Ingatestone. So at that point, you might have to declare an interest, but that is at the village in which I live and in which I represent, wearing the 2 hats. And it is fair to say that I present my compliments and apologies to anyone here on the call who might have to be from Ingatestone for the rail replacement consequences that flow from this, and indeed will flow at Christmas and New Year. Thank you.
Nonetheless, a beautiful place to be diverted through when the A12 is closed as well. So,
Which of course was closed for about 4 hours.
yes. Okay, so we've got two things in this particular item to note. Can we first and foremost note the update on the project and the risks to project delivery which have been identified? And secondly, can we note a further update on the project will be brought to the September board meeting, which will include an update on all aspects of the project. Excellent, thank you. Item 12 is our next high risk project, the Queensway Gateway Road project. I think Richard, you're going to start off and take us through this, please.
Yes, thanks, Simon. Can I just check that everybody can hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. Okay, I'm here representing the County Council to provide an update on the progress to the board. I will cover the latest position on the Queensway Gateway Road project, the steps that have been taken, along with covering some of the new risks to delivery. As with previous updates, I will not look to cover everything contained within a report, especially the context, the background to the project and the benefits realisation section, as I'll take it that you've had the chance to read that report. But we'll draw out the substantive update points and take any questions later. As a short background to the project though, fundamentally the Queensway Gateway Road is a road infrastructure project which will see the A21 connection delivering transport improvements and unlocking allocated employment land. The road will connect with Queensway running south of its junction with Ridge West, crossing the Hollington Stream Valley on an embankment and then in running south of Whitworth Road to join the A21. Turning to the update on progress focused within this report, first and foremost, East Sussex County Council wish to highlight that we are in disagreement with Sea Change Sussex regarding progress and funding associated with the project. However, we would like to emphasise that East Sussex County Council are fully committed to resolving any contentions with Sea Change Sussex, and there is an ongoing dialogue seeking to find a resolution to our disagreement to bring the project to a close with the construction of this final connection to the A21. Secondly, on other substantive matters, on progress with the scheme as per recent updates, a stage 2 road safety audit addendum has been commissioned by National Highways for this project. Sea Change Sussex designers have now submitted the required drawings for this and have received the necessary sign-off. However, Sea Change Sussex will still need to submit the full set of plans and drawings, including the signage package for review by the County Council and National Highways. This process is required to satisfy the requirements of the audit and must be carried out before all parties can enter into the Section 278 agreement. Thirdly, the employment sites unlocked by the project are already accessible from the Queensway end of the Gateway Road. As East Sussex County Council itself owns approximately 17 acres of this land around the project site, that could potentially be used to deliver some of the employment benefits. The County Council's property team have prepared an internal options report to seek approval on actions to be taken ahead of any decision to dispose or keep this asset. The draft options report is currently being reviewed, and we expect to be able to update the board on actions arising from it at the next meeting. This update will aim to consider the forecast project benefits set out in the original business case, and will assess whether a project change request needs to be brought forward to a future board meeting for consideration. We shall continue to document and monitor all the ongoing risks associated with the project, as we have done in this report. Turning to next steps, the County Council will continue to seek agreement with Sea Change Sussex to address the project budget and to secure completion of the project. The County Council will also consider the options review in marketing the employment sites in East Sussex County Council's ownership. And of course, an update on the project will be provided at the next board meeting, intending to provide clarity on the above points, update the project risks, as well as address the final actions to progress the Road Safety Audit 2 addendum, whereby the full set of plans and drawings, including the signage package, are submitted for review to the County Council and National Highways. And I'm happy to hand back now to select colleagues and to take any questions if necessary. Simon.
Thanks, Richard. Helen, I think you're going to finish up as well.
So within the report, as Richard said, the Sussex County Council have identified their areas of contention between themselves and Sea Change Sussex, including in relation to the funding package. As a result, the Sussex County Council have been unable to provide a full update on project delivery that was requested. And as you've heard, Richard has said that the Sussex County Council have indicated a commitment to resolving the areas of contention with Sea Change Sussex, but at the moment they've been unable to provide a timeline for this. And it's understood from previous updates to the board that delivery of the remaining works cannot progress on site until the full funding package has been confirmed. And therefore, if it's not possible for the issues to be resolved in a timely manner, there is a risk that delivery of the project could be further delayed. It has also been widely reported across the LGF and Getting Building Fund programmes that construction costs have significantly increased in recent months. And therefore, there is also a risk that the total project cost will increase if a funding package and contractual arrangements cannot be agreed in the short term. As Richard said, the report also seeks to provide an update on the employment land unoccupied project, which falls within the ownership of the Sussex County Council. Whilst the outcome of the options report is not yet known, the report does identify some challenges associated with bringing forward development on the site. If it's not possible for commercial development to be brought forward, it is likely that the forecast employment benefits will not be fully realised. It's therefore important that consideration is given to the ongoing achievability of the anticipated employment benefits. If it's determined that the benefits outlined in the business case can no longer be realised, it will be necessary for a change request to be brought forward for board consideration. It will be important to ensure that any changes to the project benefits do not adversely impact on the value for money offered by the project. Whilst acknowledging the challenges identified by the Sussex County Council, it is imperative that future updates on the project more comprehensively provide greater clarity as a total project cost, funding package and delivery programme. It's also important that a route to completion of the project is identified as soon as possible. And to this end, options for the way forward will be brought to the board meeting for the next board meeting for consideration.
Okay, thank you, Helen. And Councillor Blazier.
Very comprehensive. I'll say nothing more. For new members, this is the frustration of my life. And so, better I say, let's continue.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Two things to note then. So can you first of all note that for the reasons outlined in the report and the summary that we've just received, that it's not been possible to provide a full update on the project at this particular meeting? And secondly, can we note that options for the way forward will be brought to the next meeting for consideration? Thank you. Okay, item number 13, the last of our LGF high-risk projects, the London Gateway Stanford La Hope project. Kevin, you're going to start off, and then we'll pass over to Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Again, just checking that everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
Thank you. This report is an update report on where we are with the Stanford La Hope programme. I'll propose to cover the key milestones and actions that are proposed to take place until next February, and I'll also cover some of the risks associated with that. Report sort of update starts from paragraph 4.2, where we are at the moment in terms of actually we are reviewing the first phase procurement of the station building and looking at the reasons behind the failed procurement to date, or the lessons learned. The second element is actually the design team has been commissioned to undertake the design work for the interchange, and that's going well. And a number of internal and stakeholder workshops have been held, and we're progressing to moving forward on the design work for that. In terms of actually early contractor involvement, one of the lessons that we have learned is actually is not bringing on board early contractors early enough to actually understand some of the buildability issues. So the council has actually brought on board to the design team our term contractor Henderson and Taylor, who are actually who are experienced in actually designing interchanges actually, and actually in fact delivering stations as well. So they're now part of the team. So to ensure some of the ideas around buildability and actually making sure that we can afford the schemes coming forward. In terms of the business case will be in itself be informed by the design. The outstanding design element is the interchange and the costings. Once we're in a position to understand the full scheme design, including the station and the interchange and the costs associated with that, we can then actually undertake the business case, which is required. In terms of actually the key milestones, they're set out in table 1 at paragraph 4.11. What we're looking to do is actually to move forward to that to complete the scheme design and actually get a submission of an application towards October. That will allow us to then submit the business case for review and for the business case to be evaluated externally and to be presented back to the LEP Accountability Board in February 24. That is the timetable at the moment. We are, from an internal capacity, we're confident that we can achieve that timetable, bearing in mind some of the factors that we are in our control in terms of the design and moving forward. Where I would draw your attention to risks at paragraph 3.6, and I think this is something Howard will touch upon, is that the remaining budget, that unspent budget, is 15.6 million. Until we actually are in a position to understand the full design parameters for the interchange and the station and the total costs, there is a question mark: will that be enough? That follows through. If we don't have sufficient funding, we'll need to look at alternative sources, and that will impact in terms of actually our ability to complete the business case, because one of the elements of the business case is where the funding for the scheme would be. In terms of actually mitigation, we're actually obviously have started that discussion internally, which is going to be challenging in the current climate that the council's under, in terms of actually looking to reduce our financial burdens. But we are looking at talking to our strategic partners and looking at options for the Freeport. And obviously that's an ongoing work stream in conjunction with the design work.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Howard?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kevin, for your update. I'm just going to give a little bit of background on this as well, hopefully not too lengthy. Obviously, the board has received regular updates on this project, which have highlighted the difficulties that have been experienced around delivery, cost increases, and more recently the current financial challenges facing the Borough Council. In November 2021, the business case for the project was reported to the board, This revision was required due to reported increases in total project costs, which raised concerns as to whether the project continues to meet the requirements of the SELEP assurance framework, particularly in respect to continuing to offer high value for money. A number of deadlines have been set for submission of this business case, with extensions subsequently agreed by the board. It was agreed that a further request for an extension of the deadline for consideration of the revised business case could be presented to this meeting. This request has been set out by Kevin, and key milestones have been included in the report by Thorough Council, which sets out the route to consideration of the updated business case by the board in February 2024, as Kevin suggested. A considered approach has been taken to allow for the additional governance currently in place at Thorough Council and the SELEP's own timeline to take the business case through the independent technical evaluation process prior to consideration by the board. And as Kevin correctly suggested, 3.6, I was going to raise that. So the report shows that there is a remaining budget envelope of 15.6 million available to deliver both phases of the project, sent out by Kevin. It's unclear at this stage whether this will be sufficient to deliver the project. This will need to be considered within the updated business case. Should there be need to secure additional funding to enable project delivery, this may be challenging for Thorough Council given their current financial position, and therefore there remains a risk that this may not be possible to deliver the full project scope as set out in the current business case. As Kevin said, looking at all challenges as well. The updated business case will also need to include assurances from Thorough Council about how the OGF funding has been utilised and whether it continues to meet the OGF funding conditions. So in the report it sets out that the SELEP funding is 7.5 million has already been spent, clarification on that spend. The board are asked to agree that the updated business case can be submitted for consideration at the February 2024 board meeting. The board are also asked to note that if the deadline set out in the report is not met, the LGF funding will automatically be removed from the project. This recommendation has been made due to the extended period of time since November 2021 the Thorough Council have had to prepare the business case. It is considered that the timeline for preparation and submission of the business case set out in the report is realistic, as I mentioned, and takes into account the required governance processes and further project development work that will be required. It is important that projects which are in receipt of LGF funding have an approved business case in place, and therefore it is critical that either an updated business case is provided in accordance with the timeline set out in this report, or that the funding is removed from the project and reallocated to alternative projects which do have an approved business case in place. A further update on delivery of the project will be brought in September 2023 board meeting, which will include an update on progress with phase two design options and the associated planning application. Which can be Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Just wondering, I mean, looking at 3.6 paragraph, you know, we're saying that this might not be sufficient funding, and we understand the difficulties historically for adding additional funding to it. Are any approaches being made? Because it's a very important infrastructure project to the actual people that are going to use it, like Network Rail and in fact bus companies, that they will make a contribution towards this, because it will actually improve their customer service. And I'm just thinking, if there is, and we don't know, it's not in the report, how much extra money might be being looked for to do that. So it would be if we could get a promise from them to say, yes, we will make some form of contribution towards it.
I think that's really well, Kevin. I think he's got to be able to answer that.
Yeah. Kevin, can you answer that question, please, for us?
Yes, those discussions are taking place, particularly with DP World and some of the future ports. One of the challenges is what we have at the moment in terms of the design. The design was based on previous growth projections. At the moment, the council is dealing with a further growth at the ports, which are putting additional pressures on the design to increase the capacity of the design. And that's one of the challenges, is actually to future-proof the design that we're putting forward with, to allow to accommodate future growth. And unfortunately, those contributions haven't been defined yet. So we're been asked to make capacity improvements, but not necessarily having the funding to implement those. So that's a challenge in the design process. We are in discussion with DP World. We're in discussion with the free ports, and we're having a discussion with Network Rail about their contributions as well.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I've got Adam with us, just put something in there as well.
Again, from the businesses on the OSC board, finding insufficient insulator, they just wanted to register their concern around the delivery of the project. Decided to see what covers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Arnold.
I just sort of like off the back of that with, I actually had a meeting with the leader with, the gentleman that's, been given the responsibility of growing the business now that they've had the Freeport confirmed at DP World. And, we're looking at about 21,000 extra jobs, 17,000 of those will be within the Thurrock DP World remit. So there's an awful lot of expansion going there, which is why it's really important why Kevin is now talking with DP World, because this is the closest train station through that and bus route. So it'll be really good for him to be able to include that with coming forward with the business case. I just wondered as well whether we could expand the recommendation 2.11 to include allowing Kevin to bring that report back, because there are a lot of new nuances and issues that may arise within this change of business case. So rather than just a business case coming forward, can he report with it too?
Okay. We'll get to that in a moment. Thank you.
Yeah, just to indicate, I think, just as I think Adam gave similar comment on this as on the previous item, my own previous comments, I think, apply. So I think I'd be happy to support the recommendation, but we do need to contingency plan.
We do. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so we've got two recommendations here. Firstly, to agree that the updated business case and report for the project can be submitted for consideration at the February 24 board meeting. Noting that if this deadline is not met, the LGF funding will be removed from the project and will need to be returned to Essex County Council within 4 weeks by Thurrock Council for reallocation to alternative projects. Yeah.
Can we, sorry, that's where I wanted to add the extra words in. Can we agree or not to allow them to
What's the
report?
word you'd like to add specifically?
Just that Kevin and the officers can bring back a report. Have you got any specific wording, Kevin, based? It's more to bring back a report along with that business case that he can present to you on any issues.
Yeah, I think I said the business case and the
Report.
report.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't.
No,
hear
I
that.
added in there just the 2 words and report. I think that covers
Sorry.
it. That's okay. Don't worry about it. I know I rattled through those things.
But it was sensible actually to flag that there were an additional 2 words that are put in there, so it's fine, but definitely it's there.
Yeah, apologies, I missed it as you were speaking.
No, don't worry. And our second recommendation is noting that we'll get a further update on the report at our September board meeting, which will also include the update on progress with the phase 2 design options. Thank you. Excellent. Our last substantive item number 14, GPF update. Helen.
So yes, this provides the usual update on the Ground Places Fund programme, including update on project delivery and risks which are impacting the programmes. The cash flow position set out in the report shows that Essex County Council, as county officer, is currently holding approximately 9.6 million in GPF, which is not currently allocated to the project. As set out in the report, in February 2023, the strategic board agreed a number of underlying principles which were intended to help shape a new round of GPF funding, which was to be carried out during 2023-24. In light of the statement made by government in the annual budget, they were reminded to not provide any further core funding for LEPs after 23-24, and the LEP function should be integrated into local authority. Further review of options for the use of the available GPF funding has been undertaken. Is intended that proposals will be presented to the strategic board meeting, the strategic board meeting in July. Repayments totaling 5.315 million are expected in this financial year. However, there remains an element of uncertainty regarding some of these repayments. Greater clarity will be sought from part of the next board meeting. As a point of clarification, Appendix A indicates that no update has been provided on the Kitchen Creeping House project in Medway in advance of this meeting. Should be noted that subsequent to the 4 papers being published, this reporting was submitted and no risks were identified in relation to benefit realisation or repayment in accordance with the agreed schedule. So the primary purpose of the report is to set out a request for agreement of a revised repayment schedule for no use empty South Essex project. Project aims to return long-term empty properties into use for residential, alternative, commercial and mixed-use purposes. And the project was awarded a total of £1 million GPF funding in March 2021. As it stands, GPF funding has not yet been drawn down by Southend on City Council. The project was also awarded 1.2 million in building fund funding, as was discussed earlier, in late 2020. And due to the time constraints associated with the spend of the Getting Building Fund funding, it was agreed that Southend should prioritise spend of this funding ahead of the GPF. As the board are aware from this meeting and previous meetings, there were significant delays at the start of the Getting Building Fund programme. And more recently, it's been reported that due diligence and legal processes have taken longer than expected to complete. However, the Getting Building Fund project is now nearing completion, meaning that Southend on City Council are now in a position to seek drawdown of the GPF fund. Southend on City Council have reported high levels of interest in the land use centre scheme, with repeat inquiries being received from local developers. State 4 applications have been received for the use of an initial 450,000 for GPF funding. These applications are obviously in the early stages of the process and will be subject to due diligence and required legal processes before the funding can be released. But they do demonstrate an ongoing demand for the initiative. Due to the decision to use the Getting Building Fund funding in advance of the GPF funding, the project is no longer able to meet the agreed repayment schedule. It is now expected that all GPF funded no use empty loans will be issued in 23-24 with a 3-year repayment period, allowing full repayment of the GPF loan in 26-27 as set out in the report. The board also asked to note the change to the drawdown schedule for the project, with the funding now being drawn down in its entirety in this financial year. As the project is no longer able to comply with the repayment schedule previously agreed by the board, it is necessary for the proposed revised repayment schedule to be agreed before the GPF funding can be released and by the accountable body. If the board choose not to agree the revised repayment schedule, it will not be possible for the project to continue, and the strategic board will be asked to agree with the removal of the project from the GPF program.
Thanks. Any comments? Councillor Armand?
Just going forward, will there be some kind of update on options and how you can consider maintaining equity release of the loans or across?
Yes, that is part of the options being considered for the strategic board meeting next month. That's all part of what we're considering.
Okay, so we have 3 recommendations. Can we firstly note the updated position on the GPF programme? Thank you. Secondly, can we note the revised drawdown schedule for the no use empty South Essex project? Thank you. And thirdly, can we agree the proposed revised repayment schedule for the no use empty South Essex project? Good. Thank you. So I think we are at the stage of concluding the meeting. So just to confirm the date of the next meeting, 22nd of September, and we are now scheduled to be at the launch pad at Southend City Airport. Business Park. So that's the 22nd of September. We're obviously going to have some substantial items in September to discuss. Are there any urgent business? We've not got any notified to us, unexpected, any other business? Okay, and therefore I can formally close the meeting. Thank you for your input and comments today. Much appreciated. Well done. Very good. Well done.